Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the Paramedic Services Committee of Monday, September 18th, 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. It should be noted that at the moment, item one, attendance, we do not have quorum. And we do need quorum today to discuss budget. So we'll follow our procedural guidelines, which indicate that we will wait 30 minutes. And if we don't have quorum within 30 minutes, we'll have to cancel the meeting. So 30 minutes till 1:30.
Mayor Davis, can you hear me?
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We are now joined by Mayor Kevin Davis from the city, so we do have quorum. So we'll begin the meeting of the paramedic services for, again, Monday, September 18th. First item on it is the attendance. We do have regrets from Councillor Martin. We know that. So we'll go to the second item, and that's approval of the agenda. Can I get a mover for that, please? Moved by Mayor Bailey, second by Councillor Pierce. Does anybody have anything they wish to add? Okay, see none. All in favor of the agenda? Okay, that moves. Declaration of pecuniary interest. Again, if anybody has any, I don't see any hands up. So I guess we should. This agenda. Actually, we'll go to. We'll adopt the previous minutes. We should actually go through number 2, which is the recommendation. So today, we're discussing the budget, which we had on the agenda last week on September 11th. We weren't able to finish that. We did have the presentations from staff. So there were some changes made. If you've read the report, there's some slight changes made. So I will ask Cindy if she can come up to the podium and just discuss those changes that were made. But again, if you read the report, you'll see that there's some changes in the capital reserves, transfer to reserves, and some changes with the supplies. But I'll let Cindy go through it and the amounts. And then we'll kick off our discussion on the budget.
Good afternoon. So I'm pleased to present an update to the Paramedic Services 2024 budget today. And the slides will just highlight, as Chair Miller explained, some of the changes from the meeting from last week that staff made after some of the discussion at the last meeting and taking another look at the budget. So the first slide is just a summary of where we are at now, following a couple of the changes. So our operating budget proposed is at approximately 8.9 million. 2024 capital budget of approximately 860,000. And that puts us at a proposed budget net levy of 9.7% overall. The breakdown for that is the City of Brantford at about 6.4 million, or a 10.2% increase, and the County of Brant at approximately 2.4 million, or 8.6% increase. In addition to that, we do have decision packages as part of the budget document, and those decision packages would be above and beyond that net levy. So the first slide here is the proposed 10-year capital plan and reserve forecast. Following our meeting last week, staff went back and had another look at this. The changes that are proposed are highlighted in pink. So the contributions from operating, originally we had a $980,000 overall fund from operating there, and that's been reduced to 880,000. What's precipitating that is the defibrillator replacements. So in discussion with Chief King and staff, we felt that we could responsibly smooth that out over the course of 2 years and move half of those replacements to 2025. In addition, staff looked at our ambulance replacement schedule. So originally we had replacement of 3 ambulances in 2025, and we believe we can push one of those out to 2026, which has an overall kind of smoothing net effect on the capital budget for the 10 years. And overall, through those two changes, we're able to decrease the contributions from operating to $880,000. As you note in the report, staff did also do some follow-up just around capital asset purchase. We didn't have a lot of time, but we did look at the possibility of the Brant Municipal Corporation purchasing the ambulances and leasing them back. In the Municipal Act, there is some language around municipal corporations being prohibited from activities or businesses that the municipality is responsible for, and it does specifically list the Ambulance Act. So we would need to do some more legal analysis on that. If that was an option, there would be certainly some additional steps associated with that in the Brant Municipal Corporation considering a business case and determining if that's an area of business that they want to get into. We did also follow up with two of the main ambulance manufacturers to find out if they lease ambulances or if they're aware of a leasing situation within the province, and they were not. We did a survey as well with other ambulance operations across the province, and based on all the feedback we got by the time this report needed to be submitted, all of those providers directly purchase ambulances and do not have any lease arrangements. So it's certainly something that staff can continue to investigate, but not in a position currently to move in that direction. So this is the proposed 2024 operating budget, and there are two changes to this budget following the meeting last week. The first is with respect to medical supplies and patient equipment. So that increase was originally, I believe, around $138,000. Staff reviewed this again and feel comfortable with lowering it slightly, noting that the prices certainly have increased, but hopefully we'll see some stabilization next year. So we feel comfortable with that number. And of course, the transfer to reserve has been reduced based on the revised schedule. So that's been lowered by $100,000 to $350,000. This slide is a summary of the proposed 2024 budget. And the first line, and as I already reviewed, where the current percentages are currently sitting. For the decision packages, staff did go back and contemplate a different start date for 2024, which would alleviate the increase next year. So we do have a July 1st start built in there as an option for both the commanders as well as the logistics technician, and what the overall proposed net levy is and the city and county breakdown. So lastly, what staff are seeking today is direction from the committee on approval or direction of the base budget, the capital budget, and the decision packages. And just a reminder that the committee is to recommend a draft budget and forward to the city and the county by October 1st, as per the agreement.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Can you just stand by there in case we have any questions? My apologies to the committee. I just glossed over item 5.1, so I do need a motion from the committee to adopt the minutes from last week, September 11th. Moved by Councillor Pierce, seconded by Mayor Bailey. Okay. Any errors or omissions? Anybody seeing those minutes from last week? I'll see none. All in favor of adopting those minutes? Okay, none opposed. Any business arising from those minutes outside of what we're discussing today? Okay, seeing none. Okay, so again, Cindy, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate you because it was suggested last week that maybe we could go the route of leasing pretty much everything from the defibrillators to the vehicles themselves. Sounds like we can't get that done within the time frame, so we will leave that item off the table for today. But to the committee, if somebody does wish to bring forward that in a motion, you know the process and the procedures to do that for next year. So, um, based on what Cindy's presented, based what's on the report in front of us, are there any questions for staff? And we do have deputy. Is it deputy chief? Yeah, Kane. Cunate. I can't be the only one that has a problem. Deputy Chief Glenn with us today. So I'll look to the committee. Are there any questions then before we go to a recommendation? And we'll go to Mayor Davis first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that issue of the lease, I read that in the report. I'm not suggesting we deal with it now because it is too complicated. But I'd ask staff to consider it for next year. And the reason is, although the companies that supply the vehicles don't appear to use lease arrangements, you could still, I think, have a municipal service corp buy it, and then it can lease to paramedics, or I guess it would be to the county legally. And you can set your own terms of lease so long as they're commercially reasonable terms. How's the ministry going to object to it? So I still think it's a strategy that's worth considering, so that we can, as we are doing with our new building, build it into the operating budget and do so legitimately, just a little bit innovatively. So I wouldn't want us to give up on that. And I think it's something that deserves consideration for next year. That's just one comment. My second question is, I appreciate staff have done some work on the operating budget, made some amendments, and I see it now results in the base budget with an overall 9.7% increase. And my question is, what was it, the original one? I was trying to find out with the original budget as presented last week, what was the percentage increase?
Yeah, Cindy, it was last week we had a number of prior to the changes. 11.6.
Through the chair, last week's report indicated the net levy overall increase was 11.1%.
11.1% versus, okay, and through some tweaking and whatnot, you've got it down to 9.7.
Right, and again, with that revised, adjusted operating budget, what's the increase to the county and what's the increase to the city, percentage-wise?
Through the chair, the increase to the city is 10.2%, and the increase to the county is 8.6%.
The last question I have, I think, kind of relates to the budget, maybe the budget in action. And it has to do with how the ambulances, the units that are on the road and being active, do you have a breakdown of the percentage of time? I mean, you got a breakdown of the calls that come from Brantford and come out of the county. Do you have any kind of record as to how they're dispatched? Like, is the way in which they're dispatched, does it result in the same, or is it in terms of how much time they spend in each municipality? Do you have any record of that?
I don't think you would have that. It's possible. Deputy Chief, would you have those numbers handy? There was thought that was kind of broken down in last week's. We looked at those numbers. They are not here today,
Okay.
but we could get them for you if that's what you.
I was really, Mr. Chair, you could have chastised me. It doesn't really necessarily direct to the budget. So I'll hold it for our next monthly meeting. Those are my questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and I will let you know, Mayor Kevin Davis, I will not chastise you for the simple reason that you are our advocate on the city when it goes to them. I was hoping the others would be here today because it is a tough budget to deal with. You guys are obviously a very important partner in this whole process. So again, we are really counting on you to advocate on the ambulance's behalf. So, but I appreciate the questions, and we'll go to Councillor Pierce next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. So, yeah, again, I appreciate the fact of reviewing this again and doing some tweaking, we'll call it, to push some expenses out into further years. What I'm curious about is, so if we look at contributions from operating, last week's one, it was $980,000 across the board. With the one now, with the tweaking we did of pushing out the purchase of the ambulance and splitting the defibrillators, for this year it made it 880, but I see that it's 880 across the board now. Is that what it's supposed to be? Or is it only this year it's down to 880 and then we go back to the 980?
Through the chair, that is correct. It is static at the 880, which keeps us in a healthy position if you look at the end balance with some minor exceptions. So in 2026, we would be a little bit in the hole. So we may have to, for the 2026 budget, if all the costs in terms of ambulances stay the same, increase the transfer to reserve slightly. And then if you go on to 2029, there's a bit of a negative balance there too. So keeping it static over the course of the 10 years at the 880 keeps the reserve balance in a pretty healthy position.
And I appreciate that, but what I'm trying to understand here, so if we take 100,000 off each year for 10 years, that's $1 million, right? If I look at what that's going to put us below, it's going to put us below 140,000. So I'm trying to understand with the adjusting we did for this year, how does that, in essence, save us from putting $1 million in from operating? I'm trying to figure the numbers here. I may have been confusing when I was asking that. So again, what I'm trying to understand here is I realize that we pushed out one of the ambulances from 2025 to 2026. That's fine, and we split the defibrillators between 2024 and 2025, which ended up in a net savings, or not savings, but reducing the amount from operating this year of $880,000 from $980,000. I'm trying to understand how by doing that tweak, that has now saved us $100,000 for 9 years past that as well. And when you take the negative that we would be in for a couple of those years, because it's right on the page there, that only goes out to about $140,000. So I'm trying to make things jive here. Is it just the fact that we won't have the cushion left over and we're closer to zero on all those years now, so that could be touch and go?
Yeah, through the chair, by reducing it, we just don't have as much sitting in the reserve. So I'm looking back at last week's report. Mm-hmm. And by year 2023, at the 980,000, there would be 1.1 million sitting there versus 167,000. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I'm afraid that's a drastic change. I appreciate the change, but I'm thinking that might come back to bite us, I think, is where I'm going.
Through the chair, certainly having more money in the reserve from a finance perspective is likely more comforting, especially if costs increase for our various assets in terms of replacement. Mm-hmm. So,
Okay, as I said, I kind of noticed that and I went, okay, so I'm trying to understand that. Is that a place you want to be? I'll leave that one alone. Are we discussing the decision packages now too, Mr. Chair, or no?
We're going to get into those. What I'd like to do is move, if we could, at least get the budget on the floor, and then if we're going to bring the decision packages in, we'll move them as amendments to that budget.
I'll move to get it on the floor.
Okay.
As updated as of today.
As presented today. Okay, fair enough. Do I have a seconder to get the operating capital budget on the floor? Moved by Mayor Bailey. Okay, we'll continue with the discussions. Are there any more questions for Cindy? Okay, see now, one comment I have, and this is for Mayor Davis, and I think he has. I hope I know he's been sent the report for today, but I know on page 11 of 31 of today's package, page 5 of 6, in the actual report, and this is for those at home too watching, where it's broken down by municipality, net cost per capita, excluding amortization. So to staff, I appreciate the information in there. If you look at cost per capita, Brantford's one of the lowest in the comparator municipalities, and the county is quite a bit higher. The county being quite a bit higher because of the distances involved. So I thought that was pretty good. So I hope when it comes up to our respective councils at some point in the future, that at least those comparators are kept in mind, because I think it's there's a lot of information contained in there. So in front of us, okay, so we have the budget as presented. It's moved and second. It's on the floor. We also have some. Oh, Mary Davis, you had your hand up. Sorry.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Chair, but I do have a question.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so it's what you just referred to, that the net cost per capita. So what is our net cost per capita for our entire service area? So not splitting it between the county and the city. I think we need to know that to be able to compare it to the comparators.
Okay, so what's the cost per capita for both municipalities?
Yeah, combined.
Yeah, and was that we don't have a breakdown of that, do we? Okay, could we get that in the near? Could we get that, Heather?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we'll have to see in the BMA study where we pulled this data from. It doesn't look at like
okay,
shared services that way, but we could maybe look at other like areas that do share the service and see where they come in.
Okay, so back to So staff.
So the reason why I'm asking that is because it looks. I don't think the other regions have done that. And if we want to compare our cost per capita to other areas, I think we need the combined rate. And then my second question is, I guess that's more a comment than a question. How did you figure out what cost to assign to the county and to the city? And then I assume what you did was you have a cost in the budget and you assign that to the city or to the county, and then you divide it by the number of people that are either in the city or the county. But how did you come up with the split in costs, the operating budget between the city and the county?
Okay, we'll ask staff that. I don't know that staff did that. I thought it was done by BMA Management Consulting. But Heather, could you help us out there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah. Through BMA did do the data, and both the city and the county participates in the BMA management, their benchmarking study. Where they do get their data is from the financial information return that both the city and the county are required to complete for the ministry, and then the data is taken out of there and then divided by the populations to get your per capita costs.
Okay, so BMA does it, obviously, and that's based on the information submitted by each municipality to the ministry.
Correct.
Okay, does that answer your question?
No, I still don't understand it, because we divide between the city and the county based on a proportionate population. the amount that we each bear of portion of the budget the province doesn't pay. So, like, I'm finding it hard to understand how the cost per capita in the city can be, so much less than the county. Like, I'm just bewildered by that. It doesn't seem right. And that's why I was asking the question. Does it say that, sorry I'm making these, but it raises a lot of questions. Like, does that mean we're getting less of the service than we should, and thus our cost per capita are less? Does it mean that more of the service is going to the county, and thus a greater cost, which means a higher cost per capita? There's so much you can read into these numbers that it doesn't answer. And so I'm having a real problem with those numbers and trying to understand what underlies the numbers and what that data tells us. So,
And I'm just, yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know. Is there anything you could share with us, Heather, other than what?
I can share a bit more. I don't know that it will clarify through you, Mr. Chair. Because it's a cost sharing service, and that the county provides, how we reported on our financial information return is slightly different, because what we're just invoicing the city for their share. Meanwhile, on our financial information return, we have the base, the operating costs, but then we also have the amortization coming in. And I did question it, like Mayor Davis, and why the numbers were a little variant. And I think it's just that amortization piece that is included in our financial information return that's not showing in the city, that isn't incorporated into the cities.
Yeah, so what you're saying is if you're including the amortization in the county, that's the capital, I assume. Whereas I think you're saying that the city, when they report to this agency, they don't include that amortization, which is in essence the capital cost. I think that's what you're saying.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, pretty much.
Really, wouldn't we expect, given how we split the net cost of the municipalities between us, really shouldn't it be the same per capita, given how we split that dollar amount between us?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can do that calculation on our own, similar to what BMA, just taking the overall population. See, I would agree, and that's why I did look into the number a little bit further.
Yeah, I think it's worth doing, because I think this number is misleading and could lead to misconceptions about how the service allocates its resources between the city and county, which I don't think reflects reality. So, but it doesn't really make any difference, I think, to the budget, because the budget's the budget, and this figure is not going to impact that. But I think it does have broader implications, and so I think we should be careful that we're using a number for the city and the county that's the same, that we're doing apples to apples, not apples to oranges. So I'm hoping at our next meeting we can get some clarification on that, and also what the number would be for the entire service area combined, so that we can then do the comparator with other areas like Hamilton, London, Windsor, etc.
Okay, I'm going to follow up on what the Mayor Davis just said to you, Heather, because I want to be clear. The amortization, which it says excluding amortization, but you say it's in there anyways, and the reason the county is showing it much higher is because we are on paper, the owners of the assets, so that's why our costs would be higher. Is that? Am I reading that correctly? Did I hear it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, let me double check on all the
Okay.
figures, and then I'll get back to you.
Okay, because it would be nice to, and I know it's a little bit tough comparing apples, but at the end of the day, we should be comparing apples to apples and oranges to oranges, I guess. So okay, so Heather will look at that, because that is I mean, it's a big difference, but that could certainly explain it. So, okay, I appreciate you bringing that up. Okay, on the floor we have the budget. Is there any other further discussion on the capital and the operating budget as presented before we move on to the decision packages? And I do not see any hand. Oh, Mayor Davis.
Sorry. Um, yeah, the operating budget. Oh, and just one other question I have. So the reason why uh, the city increases 10.2 and the county 8.69, is that because the city has grown faster than the county over the last year or so, thus the ratio of how we split costs has changed? Is that what's driving that difference?
Through the chair, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, okay. That's what I thought. Okay, so on the base operating budget, I think our residents in both city and county expect us to provide a certain standard of paramedic ambulance services, and I believe this base budget reflects that. It's the full annual cost of the additional ambulance we added into the current year's budget, and it would appear from the usage rates we saw at our last monthly meeting that a budget that kind of a static budget in the sense that it's the same resources makes sense given that we've seen a bit of a plateau in the demand and hopefully that does continue. But I would say that, and I'm sure many other municipalities feel the same way, which is great that we can control, uh, have some element of local control over paramedic services, but the reality is we're paying as municipalities for a healthcare cost that really should be the responsibility of the province, and thus their inability or their reluctance or their refusal to match their contribution to our current budget and saddling us with their contribution being determined by past budgets means that our share of this healthcare cost continues to rise. And I frankly, as a municipal politician where we have a limited tax base, I think that's unacceptable. And I can tell you that the OBCM is beginning to agitate and advocate for what we think is long overdue, and that's a review of what the province pays for and what we pay for. And this will be part of the case for asking for that. And I'm hoping if that does become a public policy issue across the province, that my county friends will join in with us to uh, have the province relook at how we allocate and share these kinds of costs. The health unit being another example of that.
Okay. If I
And
could,
lastly, I'll just thank staff for tweaking the budget, making it a little more. Because I mean, this is a tough year for our taxpayers. A lot of people are experiencing inflation in their we all are in our family budgets, and it's creating hardship. And I think we've got to be mindful of that.
yeah. Okay, thank you. No, I appreciate what you're saying. As we were reminded at AIMO, and you reminded me again of what I was reminded at AIMO, 8 to 10% of all the tax dollars paid in Canada go to municipalities. Yet municipalities are expected to, we are responsible for 60% of all capital infrastructure. The numbers are not working, and this clearly shows this too. Because the principal source of revenue is the property tax, and it is a regressive tax at the end of the day, and it's their only, like I say, it's our primary source of revenue. So it's structurally, I think the whole system needs to be fixed, and I know we've made delegations to AMO to, last year we made presentations there, because they are not upholding their end of the bargain when they don't raise it with inflation. So I think what we're at, Cindy, 44% right now, the province, yeah. And they said they are supposed to be at 50%. So something we're working on. I think something we continue to have to push on, but unfortunately, this is what we have with us today. So your comments are noted. I think they are unfortunately the reality we're facing today. Any other comments or questions on the base budget and operating budget? Okay, seeing none. We also have, as you know, a couple decision packages. And if we go, they're from last week's. But we'll go them one at a time. We had the commander level positions. There was two. I'm going to see if there is an amendment on the floor that wishes to put that decision package into the budget. If there's not, it won't go in. It's as simple as that. Okay, Councillor Pierce.
Thank you,
Hand is
Mr.
raised.
Through you. For the decision package for the commanders, and I appreciate the fact that we've discussed about pushing it out to the July 1st time frame. My question here is, is it possible to do one of them in 2024 and one of them in 2025? That would be my question. I appreciate the fact of the importance of the position, don't get me wrong, but I think we're going right now from having none, and I'm wondering, is it possible to split those as well? One this year, one next year?
Okay, Deputy Chief Canane, could you speak to that or no?
I'll start.
Okay.
And if you want to add. Through the chair, certainly that is possible. What is proposed in the decision package is that the two commander positions would essentially offer 7-day-a-week coverage. So you'd have that coverage over the weekend and all week by having two. If it was mitigated to one, then that 7-day-a-week option obviously is not possible. But we would likely structure the position so that you would have that level of oversight over the weekends, which is a gap right now. So again, I mean, adding the additional resource certainly would help. Optimally, we'd have two, but recognizing that there is some pressures this year, we could look at splitting that over 2 years.
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Chair. And
hold on, just Glenn, is there anything you wanted to add to that? You okay? All right. Because what I got from Cindy was they're meant to go together at this point to cover the 7 days. You got
that? Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. And in addition to Cindy's comments, we believe that the commander positions are essentially vital to the ongoing successful operations of the paramedic services in the county and the city. The city and the county have both done a fantastic job of rapidly increasing the paramedic frontline resources since the county and city took over operations in 2000. The management support on the other side was a little bit delayed in keeping up with those frontline advances. And as the service continues to expand to a larger presentation, the demands on legislation adherence, staff supervision, especially on times where there is no front office staff currently on site, is an increasing task essentially daily. We further have risks of things such as, unfortunately, that may occur at times as mass casualty disasters and such have you. We need that sort of higher level of oversight to not only assist the frontline paramedics, however, also the superintendents who are on duty. The superintendents are essentially, when they're on duty, responsible for managing the service for the entire municipalities of the county and the city. And with no immediate on-site resources for them to depend on, they can become quite burdened into tasks and unable to divide the proper attention to what needs to be accomplished to serve the city and the county respectfully in a positive fashion. So the commander certainly would be very beneficial as well when we look at the upcoming years for things such as succession planning. We would need to have a plan in place as some of the members of the senior management team and other avenues in the service may be going through that succession role in the coming years.
Okay, Councillor Pierce, you had a follow-up question?
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chair. And again, I don't get me wrong, I appreciate the importance of the position, and I'm not saying that it's not warranted or needed. All I'm asking is, right now, we don't have anything. So by adding one, to me, you know, that's better than we are right now, working towards where we want to be, type thing. And as far as you know, planning for retirements and stuff like that, I'm not talking putting it off 3, 4, 5 years. I'm just talking just 1 year. I'm just throwing that out on the table. And I understand that we're just moving the cost from this year to next year, as we did from 24 to 25 with one of the ambulances. I get that. Eventually, we're going to have to pay for that position, but I'm just trying to understand what the ramifications would be to push one of them off a year. That's all.
Is it workable? I think is in it's
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, ideally, you know, 2 would be the goal, but if 1 were attainable, it would be workable, you know, for the time being. Would of course mean looking at the best hours and timelines to implement that. Bottom line, though, it would be workable.
okay. Just to be clear, they would be reporting to you. So yeah, any input you have is appreciated. So
Yes, thank you.
Mayor Davis, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'm going to say this with a great deal of respect for our service and the level of paramedic service they provide and their commitment to doing that with the resources they have available to them. But at the same time, we've got to be mindful of the situation of many of our taxpayers that they're facing inflation, which I understand right now is running at about 3.2%. And their wages not matching that, and people generally uh, feeling, well, not feeling, they're facing family budget crises, and it affects a large part of both communities, especially those who are earning at or near minimum wage. And many of them, of course, struggle to purchase and live in their own homes for their families. We can never lose sight of that. And for that reason, and because the base budget is an increase that's about 3 times the rate of inflation, this will push it to about 5 times the rate of inflation, 4 to 5 times. Despite the fact that I believe, and if I look at it from one perspective, from that of staff and the service and providing excellent service, yeah, I understand the need for the request, but it's our role to balance that against what we believe our community can afford to pay. And sometimes you just have to live within your means. And I think that a budget increase of up around 15%, for me, that's unacceptable. Um, Doing the balancing act between being fiscally responsible, but also being operationally responsible. And our role as those who you know, are mandated to oversee the service. So I'm going to, with regret, indicate that I'm not going to support any of the decision packages. I fully and wholeheartedly support the base budget, but I can't support the decision-making package.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Davis. Any other comments or questions from the floor? Okay, seeing none. At this time, again, we have the motion on the floor, but I will ask if there is any amendments on decision package 1. And being the chair, I will not be bringing it forward myself. Councillor Pierce.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Through you, I would like to amend the decision package for the commanders to 1, not 2.
And do you have a start date for that? Councillor?
July the 1st.
Okay. So their amendment on the floor, well, it's been moved anyways, is to hire commander level position, so 1, start date July 1st. Do we have a seconder for that? Mayor Bailey. Okay. Any comments or questions on that amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the amendment? Okay. All those opposed? Okay, seeing none, that has been moved. So that will take us to amendment number, or sorry, decision package number 2. And that is on paramedic logistics technician. And I don't know if Glenn or Cindy, does anybody want to speak to that before we discuss it? I've read it, and I do have a couple of questions on it, but if you guys want to present first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The logistics technician is a position that is becoming mainstream throughout many paramedic services in Ontario. It transfers some of the responsibilities that currently are overseen by our on-shift superintendents to personnel who can more focus on those tasks, specifically stock management, some compliance with that stock, sourcing out new equipment, suppliers of that equipment, and maintenance of the vehicles, arranging for maintenance of the vehicle, etc. The what that does, of course, is it allows our superintendents thereby to focus more on day-to-day operations of the service from an efficiency perspective and providing that care to the citizens of both the county and the city. So as the service continues to grow, the and the call volume continues, the paramedics need that reliability, that the supplies, the vehicles, the equipment, etc., are all in top configuration and available to them to be deployed at any moment. As such, the logistics position becomes definitely an integral part of the service as we continue to grow.
Okay, I appreciate the explanation and in a little more detail. Again, we have it in front of us, but it's nice to hear it from the horse's mouth. Are there any questions for the deputy chief on that decision package? Okay, just going through the proper procedure here with the clerk. Because we're doing this through an amendment process, you want us to, okay, well, we're not there yet, but we will amend the first amendment if this passes.
Through the chair, correct. So if this decision package, if somebody wants to move this as an amendment to an amendment, then this would be added to Councillor Pierce's original amendment, and then the main motion would be voted on.
Okay. Probably not the smoothest way to do it, but procedurally it would be correct. Okay, any questions for the deputy chief on that position? I didn't see any hands raised, but I do have a question then if I don't see any questions. Glenn, do you see this position saving any money? Because in our report, they talk about optimizing procurement. Is it possible to save money on supplies, logistics?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. It is possible by sourcing out alternative vendors, alternative equipment. There may be some savings possible there that a logistics staff or technician would have more time to dedicate to doing more in-depth research into those matters. As well, we currently pull superintendents off the road to perform many of the tasks that would be come part of the the logistics technician's duties, such as equipment maintenance. The legislation requires us to maintain and do testing on equipment on a schedule based on call volume and time criteria, and that's currently done by our superintendents, who are then, of course, pulled from frontline duties and at times need to be backfilled in order to have appropriate frontline superintendent coverage maintained while we perform those tasks and procedures that otherwise could be the responsibility of a logistics technician. So there may be an opportunity there as well to save some costs.
Okay, so it's possible then to save money on resources, whether it be materials or is that the word, manpower? Anyways, labor costs. So okay, thank you very much. Any other questions on this particular decision package? Okay, I will see if anybody wishes to put that on the floor. Okay, I don't see any hands up. So we will move on then. So we will go to the budget, the draft operating budget and capital budget with an amendment, one amendment made to approve one superintendent commencing July 1st. So is it possible, Heather, would you have those numbers that we could put into the motion or no?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, I do. Did you want to clarify anything, Cindy? It is the position, one position and the vehicle. Starting July 1st. So
Yep.
then, yeah, the increase would be at $202,007. So that proposed net levy would be $9,179,298, or a 12.2% increase, with the city's share being $6,636,633, or 12.7%, and the county share being $2,542,666, or 11%.
Sorry, what's I missed the very last percent.
11%.
11 even? Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to ask the committee members. Yeah. Okay. Glad I did. Before we go to a vote on that, we'll start with Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, I'm trying to figure out the math here, because if we look at our package and it says with decision package starting July 1st, okay, it talks about decision package with the commanders and decision package for the logistic technician. So the logistic technician is off the table and the commanders is cut in half. So to me, that's 131,000-ish, 132,000. So how do we get 202,000?
Through the chair, the commander positions included a vehicle. So it includes the cost of a vehicle and then one position to start July 1st.
Okay, so it was a shared vehicle? Is that how it was going to be?
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, so it's not exactly half. It would be.
Okay.
That's right.
No, that makes sense. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Davis, you had your hand up. I don't know if that was on the same question or.
It's really kind of procedural. So we're about to vote on whether to add the logistic technicians.
There was no mover for that.
Oh, okay, sorry. So are we going to be voting then on the main budget? Is that what we're doing right now?
Yes, so we're going to vote on the budget as proposed for operating capital with one amendment, and that amendment that the budget also include one commander beginning July 1st. And,
okay.
And as we just
so learned, I'm going to ask for a separated vote. One vote on the base budget and one vote on the commander.
Okay, just to be clear, we did vote on the amendment and it passed.
I know, but I think, am I not entitled to, when you're doing the kind of the omnibus motion, to ask for items to be separated?
Yeah, the clerk is nodding her head, so I will go with I will defer to the clerk, and she says yes. So,
thank you.
yeah, just to be clear, Mr. Mayor, you don't want everything separated, just those two, right?
Yeah, I think that's really, it has two major components. The major one being the base budget, and really an amendment to the base budget, or let's call it an addition to the base budget, the commander. And I'm asking for those two decisions, final decisions, to be, if they could be separated, please, for a separate vote on each.
We'll defer to Alicia for 1 second.
So through Chairman Miller to Mayor Davis. So just wondering, because there are implications in terms of the operating and the capital that would be passed that are contingent upon that amendment, if we could perhaps do that clause first.
What you're saying is a separated vote, but let's vote first on the commander.
Through Chairman Miller, that would be correct, because the operating and the capital budget, which would be passed, would include those amended figures, which Heather has just read out. And therefore, if we pass the operating and the capital first with those figures and then do not pass the other clause, then there would be an issue procedurally.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Okay, so I will call a question then on which we've already called. We'll call again on going. Well, who was the original mover?
Just if I may explain my
Councilor
rationale.
Pierce. Yeah, Councilor Pierce.
So I voted for the amendment because it reduced the potential impact of that budget initiative, but it didn't by that indicate that I would be willing to approve it and include it in the overall budget. So it's kind of obtuse, but sometimes happens at City Council. We do it this way.
Yep, fair enough. Okay, it was originally moved by Councilor Pierce and seconded by Mayor Bailey. And that motion again, you want to read it, Madam Clerk?
That the decision package for one commander be approved by the Paramedic Services Committee with a start date of July 1st to the 2024 budget.
Okay, any questions before we call that vote? Okay, all in favor? All opposed? Okay, that's carried.
I want to indicate that I'm opposed to it. Sorry.
What did he say? Sorry, sorry, Mayor Davis. Did you wish to vote against, you said?
Yeah, this is the commanders we're voting on,
Yeah, okay.
right? And my vote is against.
Okay. Okay, and we will point out that that it did pass. So this will take us to the proposed budget with that decision package amended as it is to be included with that proposed 2024 budget. So does anybody need those numbers read out again? Okay, see none. I think we're good. So I will call that. Did we get a move? Yeah, we got to move our way back when for that. Yeah. So okay. So all in favor of the proposed 2024 budget with the one commander position included? All in favor, please raise your hand. And all opposed? Okay, so noted. So that is passed. And just to be clear, Cindy, just walk us through the next steps because this has to go to the city, just if you don't mind.
Yeah, through the chair. So the committee's recommended draft budget will be sent to city and county council. The city will consider the budget through their process in October, which may include a presentation from staff at one of their meetings. Following that, just bear with me. So the City Council may approve the budget in principle or identify questions, comments, or concerns with the draft budget, and notice of the City Council's position will be sent to the county by November 1st. November 30th is another marked date, the draft budget and notice of City Council's position to be presented to County Council on or before November 30th. And County Council may then either approve, amend, and approve the draft budget after giving consideration to the county's position. December 1st, the county approved budget to be forwarded to City Council by that date.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Okay, so Yeah, that was in the report too, but I think it's important to make sure that everyone understands that yeah, still has to be approved by both council, city, and county. Okay, moving on. I didn't see any other business when we brought up the agenda. Does anybody have any other business? Okay, so we are going in camera, correct? Oh, there's nothing to update on that one. Okay, and that was the same as last week. Is there anyone that wishes to discuss labor relations or employee negotiations? There's nothing, I think, to update, but if there was any questions from the committee, we are here today. Does anybody wish to go on camera? Okay, I don't see any hands. Okay, we'll leave that then. So at this point, the next meeting has been set for November 1st, 2023. And yeah, we'll try and get a full house for that one. So at this point, see no other hands. I will call this meeting adjourned.